Hello and welcome to Anyone's Guide to Wellbeing. My name is Adam.
My name is Zac. This is the podcast for anyone looking to improve their well-being. We'll be discussing ideas and tools that anyone could use in their daily life.
And we hope to reduce the stigma surrounding talking about well-being and mental health. And today we'll be basically just covering well-being for anyone. Zac, what does well-being mean?
Well, I think well-being is different for different people, but generally my understanding and how I approach well-being is that it's sort of how you feel in yourself. Mm-hmm. So, you feel comfortable, your mental health feels stable and steady. You feel able to tackle daily life and not only tackle it, but actually enjoy daily life.
Yeah.
I would say. What's your take?
Well, it's pretty much the same. It's not always a case of, being at your absolute peak all of the time, but it's at least having the tools and kind of preparations and steps ready to be able to take on life even when you're at like a lower point. So it's basically just maintaining yourself so that you can function and enjoy the world around you. But you said something that I think is a very important thing, and it was pretty much the first thing you said, is that it's different for everyone, because as we go through all of these episodes and these different topics that we're going to cover, one of the main important things is that it's going to be different for everyone, and you need to pick and choose the ones that are right, for you and the ones that work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very easy in your day-to-day life to look at other people, because that's your reference point, isn't it? It's much easier to have a reference point of other people presently than perhaps yourself, either at the moment or in the past or in the future, as a reference point. And it's very easy to look at someone over there who's doing really, really well, looks like they're not making any effort in maintaining their well-being. Every day they seem to be really happy, and you think, oh well, how can I be like that? How can I be like that? That happy, that comfortable in myself? And that's not often the best approach. You have to work out what's happiness for you, what's having a good mental stable health. What's that for you? What does that look like for you? And how do I get to that? That's how we think. Well, that's what we see as well-being. And then I suppose the bulk of our conversation today will be talking about what sort of tools and techniques you might want to use to maintain that well-being. The first thing, I think front and centre, that we need to say is that it's okay to suffer from mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's such a stigma around it at the moment, and we pretend that it's not part of our body, and we separate out mental and physical health. I think that can be quite dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because, if you've got a muscle cramp or shin splints from running too much, you treat that as an injury, and you put in place
things to recover from the injury that you've caused yourself. Whereas with, mental health, if someone had broken their leg, you wouldn't just be like, oh, well, I think you're being a little bit over dramatic. But with
pick yourself up.
Come on, just, it's all in your head. It's all in your leg. That broken leg, it's all in your leg. That is where it is. Because that's the response that you get a lot with mental health issues, especially, it's sometimes if it's a very extreme case, then it would be taken more seriously. But like when it's just, the day-to-day struggle, then it can be sidelined very, very quickly, and you can really put it on the back burner. And interestingly, with what you were saying earlier about like looking at other people and saying like, oh, they're doing okay and I'm not. You have to remember that sometimes, just because that's the version of them that they put forward, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the version of them that is, behind closed doors.
Yeah. And you also don't see the amount of work that they put in to be able to go to work and for 8 hours be their best version of themselves. And then when they get home, you don't know how much work they have to put in to try and be that for 8 hours. It might exhaust them. They might then spend the next 5 hours from 5 till 10 in bed,
crashed out,
recovering,
putting things in place for the next day,
having
stress. And the thing is, like, it's kind of funny because because what we're doing here is obviously we're trying to give out tools, and we're trying to give out and discuss ideas and put more of this out into the world. The funny thing is that, like, there are some people that they have already done that, but without realizing ever that they were doing it, you know? Like, some people automatically do look after their well-being, which is great, you know.
Yeah, some
but
people
you have to forgive yourself if you've never learnt it. It would be like if I bought you an antique table and said, maintain this antique table. It's like, well, I've never been shown how to maintain an antique table before. But then someone who, owns Antique Table Emporium might come in and be able to look after it perfectly, obviously. You wouldn't then be like, oh man, you wouldn't put yourself down that you'd never learnt how to maintain it. It's just a case of, there's never a bad time to start learning how to maintain your mental health and learning how to maintain your well-being.
It's absolutely spot on. And some people, like say, they're lucky, they might have had parents who maintained their well-being and put in place, just by chance, the right coping mechanisms for their children to be able to maintain their mental health into adulthood. Whereas there are other people who maybe in their younger years they had really good coping mechanisms, but then as their life has changed and switched, meandered, absolutely, they're now in a situation where their existing coping mechanisms are no longer effective. And and I think, just as an aside, it's useful to remember that this is a very fluid approach,
malleable,
absolutely
changing approach.
Exactly. And you have to be realistic about that. And these tools that we are going to discuss in this episode, not so much in this episode. This
is definitely more of an introduction to what we mean by well-being and the types of things that we're going to hopefully put across. Starting off slowly in a way, but each episode we are going to cover a different topic more specifically. But this is definitely just more of an introduction to the whole idea of what it is we're looking to do.
Absolutely. And so in each of these episodes, the tools that you hear, you might say, oh, that's useless to me. That's fine. And there's a kind of an element of, we're coming from our own background, and the tools that we've used and have worked for us, and the tools that we've heard of may not apply to all of our listeners. And the idea, I think, is more...
I mean, they don't even all apply to one another.
Exactly.
Even between us two, we're relatively similar in some ways, but even then there are coping mechanisms that I find work that you find you don't find work at all.
Absolutely.
And there's hundreds that I've heard from other people just don't work for me. It's just not something that helps me in any way. But then there's all the other ones that do.
What I would love for all of our listeners to kind of take away is just a bit of, encouragement to be able to go and find the tools that work for them, and to be able to feel comfortable that it's okay to do that. Because I think at the moment there is that sort of thing where it's actually frowned upon. It's not okay to explore the things that will make your mental health better.
The different ideas,
and I think it goes back to the classic quotes that we were sort of saying earlier of like, get over it, or if you've got bad mental health, it's just a sign of weakness, and you should just naturally be a-okay all of the time, and that's just not how life works.
And I think also, sort of following on from that, is that people have that idea of like, if I look for help, then that means I have a problem. A lot of the time, you don't want to look for help, because in looking for help, you are admitting to the fact that there's something wrong. And it's a lot of the time a lot easier to deny the problem than to look for a solution, especially when it's something internal. If it's something external, again, you can't convince someone that you don't have a broken arm if your arm is very clearly broken.
Exactly.
But you could possibly convince the people around you to an extent that you're fine, when really you're really suffering.
I think that's really interesting, because I think there's a bit of confusion sometimes that a coping mechanism is actually just a way to alter your externalities, or rather how you're exhibiting yourself externally, so that no one figures out that you have something going on inside. But actually, while that allows you to kind of get through the day without anyone thinking that you have mental health issues, is actually not helpful in the long term. And I think for two reasons. So I think the first is that actually you need to be finding coping mechanisms which actually make you feel better, and don't just allow you to pretend that you're better to other people. And I think secondly, and this plays into the stigma conversation. And it's just that actually, if we're all doing that, then we're just kind of screwing each other over, because none of us are able to talk about our mental health. And when you can't talk about mental health, it's really, really hard to make those steps to make changes.
To make a change.
You know, and I'm not saying, you know, you run into the office on Monday morning and say, hey everyone,
hi guys, I'm sad.
I'm sad, and shout it. But at the same time, I think it's healthy to I mean, it depends on your situation, unfortunately, but if you are able to be more honest about your mental health to whatever degree you're able to in the situation that you're in, will slowly sort of break down that stigma. But then also just keep in the back of your mind, even if you're in a position where you can't do that, perhaps you're in one of these sort of, I mean, I've never worked in corporate, but my perception of corporate is one of those things where if you show one sign of any form of weakness,
that's it. Yeah.
I mean, perhaps that's a really bad stereotype of the corporate world, and I think it's slightly changing. But anyway, the point is, it's as an example. As an example. If you do feel that you're in that situation and you can't talk about it, I think what you should keep in mind is that this isn't a problem. You're not broken if you have mental health issues. And because you were saying about the thing of, like, I can't remember exactly the words you used, but it was around admitting that you have a problem and that sort of thing. And there's an underlying issue in that, is that people
see that they think that it's not fixable. I think what you're driving at is that and if that is what you're driving at, then I absolutely agree, is that there's a difference between admitting that there's a problem and admitting that something is broken. If you have a mental health issue, you're not, as you say, you're not broken.
No.
It's not the end of the world. It's not that if you admit that, then that's it for the rest of your life. You have that problem and there's no way around it. And that's the whole point of what we're talking about here, is that sometimes you have to just say, look, this isn't working and I need to find a way to make this work. Just going back to, because you were saying about coping mechanisms. Now, this is just what I think of when I think of coping mechanisms, but I always think of coping mechanisms as being quite short term. I don't know if that's really the correct use of the phrase, because a big thing that we're going to be talking about probably each episode is that none of the things that we're talking about are particularly short term. The whole point of everything that we're going to be saying, everything that we're going to be talking about, and every subject that we're going to be bringing up is that it's a lifestyle change. That's why we're saying it's more about, like, it's like ideas and tools rather than like tips and tricks. Because it's very easy to find a couple little tips and tricks here and there of, like, you know, improving your day. And though there are going to be probably quite a few of them like dropped in, the whole point of this is more as a shift in mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about the way that you think and the way that you interact with your mental health, you know?
One of the things which is important to highlight at this junction is that we are, as you say, we're doing preventative rather than reactive help to mental health. And it should also probably be mentioned that neither of us are professionals. We've found our own tools to manage our mental health and well-being, which we think would be useful to discuss and to share. If you are in a position where you need reactive mental health advice, please seek that out. And depending on what country you're in, it might be a different avenue, different signpost. But please, if you are in a position where you're not doing okay, please just seek out some advice, because it's so important. Reeling it back to our preventative measures, I think anyone is able to do this. I think that's the our main point of the entire podcast actually is that
this is all available to anyone.
Do this.
And that's why we're putting such a heavy focus on, you know, the malleability of it, the fact that it's finding what works for you, finding what's suitable for you, and that's really what makes it for anyone. It really is just so broad that it's just a case of finding the things that work specifically for you. You know, I've brought it up a couple of times, it's just about the mindset. And that's why it's for everyone, is because this mindset is something that you can just apply into your own life. We're not saying, you know, like, open your chakra and you know, become completely focused on well-being. You know, we're not saying, like, because that, I think, is another smaller stigma that comes from, like, well-being.
Absolutely.
And a lot of this is that people see people that focus on well-being and it does become their life. Every time you talk to them, everything that they do, it all becomes about this one subject, this one topic, and it's all that they talk about all of the time.
Yeah.
And another part of the point of this is that we're saying this is stuff that you need to apply to your daily life. You know, these are all little things that you just slot in with the rest of your routine, or building a routine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's another thing, you know, it's either if you don't have a routine built already, that's something that can come into play, is building a routine and then building these things in.
I really want to emphasize what you just said, because it's really not about zero or hero. It's not about you becoming that complete Zen master,
meditating,
who's completely,
yoga.
Yeah, just so Zen.
Not that there's anything wrong with any of that.
No, there's nothing. No, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But this is about, like you say, slotting in small bits, and there is the potential that no one would even know that you're doing these activities. The only way that they would know is that they would turn around and go, oh, you're looking a lot better. You seem healthier in yourself, and sort of thing.
Yes.
So they won't
absolutely.
see you. You know, you're not meditating at your desk every day, but like, you know, at home you're perhaps swapping out a bad meal for a healthy meal, or at home you're taking a bit of time to meditate each evening, or whatever it is. That
Turning off your phone at the end of the day, or you've decided to go to the gym instead of the pub after work, or something like that. Little things, little changes that you've made will all of a sudden have an impact. And when you start, it is strange how quickly these changes can start to take effect.
Yes.
I noticed very quickly when I started having healthier habits, not only would people directly bring things up that I was looking healthier, that even little things like my skin looked clearer was one of them, but the ways that people interact with you changes, or can change hugely, just after making a few little changes that you wouldn't have thought would change how people interact with you. But it's because if you're putting time and effort into making yourself feel more relaxed, you're making yourself feel more comfortable within yourself, your anxiety goes down, your outlook changes because you are thinking differently about the world around you, which obviously means that the way the world interacts with you is different. If you start interacting with yourself and the world differently, then the same thing is going to happen in the other direction. People are going to interact with you differently as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so much easier to be able to have conversations with people if you haven't got stuff going on in the background. You're not anxious, you're not thinking about X, Y, or Z. You can have a present conversation, which is a higher quality conversation with a person. And if you're having these better conversations with lots of people throughout the day, because you're no longer having to be weighed down by the thing in the background, then obviously things are going to get easier. And there's for lack of a better word, like a sort of a snowball effect. Is, you know, if you're making a little change, which then helps you receive a little positive feedback, then that little positive feedback will encourage you to then
continue making these changes.
The change and making the change and making the change until you've become... I mean, there's no end goal to this. This is the point as well. That there's never an end goal. This is an ongoing maintenance. That shouldn't be daunting. We don't want you to feel daunted by this, because that's not the point.
Just to expand on that no end goal for just a second.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very good point, and it is where I think almost, you know, you're right in saying we don't want you to feel daunted, but I think the thing is, having an end goal should be more daunting than not. Having an end goal, or thinking that you have an end goal, is more frustrating and more... Because this is something that I've seen, getting frustrated that I haven't reached the end, you know, the end game of what I'm trying to do. And the whole point is that there isn't an end game. You're not trying to you know, like we were saying, you're not trying to be the yoga master Zen 100%, you know, complete, you know, living on a farm with zero waste and eating
solar panels.
Solar panels and eating only kale and all that stuff. Though that, you know, would be absolutely wonderful. It's just not realistic. It's not a modern way of life. So it is more about, like you say, ongoing lifestyle changes, really. It's more about lifestyle change than it is about reaching any kind of goal. It's about changing your life for the better.
Without being a bit too dark, there is only one end goal for everyone. Like, we all know what that end goal is.
You're absolutely right.
We all know what that end goal is. It's the same for everyone. So between then and now, you want to make whatever that amount of time is, you want to make that as good as possible. And to make that as good as possible, it's ongoing. It is ongoing.
We live in a linear span of time, so It is going to be ongoing until it's no longer going on.
Linear span of time in the multiverse.
Yeah, well.
This is now a physics podcast.
It's all changing. But you're absolutely right, yeah. We do have limited time. It is a shame, I suppose, but it's making the best of what you have. Sometimes you only have access to the tools at your disposal.
Yes.
So what I'm basically trying to say is just that, this is all about making the best of what you have around you.
And it can be simple things. Simple little tidbits to swap in. Maybe it's 3 minutes before bed. You just take a couple of really deep breaths and you just have a debrief. Because I think it is fair to say that finding time for these things can be really, really hard. But I don't believe that anyone is completely busy, fill up their whole there are very few people in life who are so incredibly efficient that they have literally every second they're doing something that can't be swapped out.
Yeah.
So if you're going home, think about the activities you do when you go home, and think, are there any areas there where there's a bit of time that I can slot something in, or I can actually swap something out? And we're going to talk about this actually in episode 3 about swapping activities. But just to give a sort of brief idea of, if you're kind of watching TV for 2 hours a night, maybe you watch it for 1.5 hours a night, and then that half an hour you choose something which is helpful. Maybe it's something honestly as simple as, like I said, taking a deep breath, having no technology on.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to do some exercise, 30 minutes of yoga, or maybe
meal prep.
Meal prep. Yeah. Prep for the next day.
Prep for the next day.
Yeah.
Just have a think down of what you're going to be doing the next day, so you can feel more prepared when you wake up the next day.
One of the things for me that's helped me so much is that when I wake up every morning, everything's kind of reasonably prepared for my next day. All of the things that I can control are prepared. My clothes are laid out. I've got my lunches, plural. Yes, plural. I have 2 lunches. I'm a hungry guy. Already made, ready to go. They're in the fridge. Breakfast is, half made, so I have boiled eggs for breakfast.
Yeah.
They're already boiled, and I just wake up, I stumble down to the kitchen, and I just crack the eggs, and I'm ready to go. And for me, that was just such an important thing, because mornings for me are horrible. I really don't like mornings. Yeah. Really struggle with them. Always have really struggled with kind of my mental well-being in the morning.
Yeah.
And actually just having everything prepared so that I don't even have to think about stuff in the morning. I get out of bed, I do the things, and then by the time I've done all of that, I'm awake and I'm fine, and I've got through that first half hour of the day that I hate. Yeah. Without having to make any conscious decisions, because it's all subconscious.
It's all already
I know
done.
I can go through exactly what my routine is with you now, and it's the same every day. Don't have to think about it, and that helps the whole day.
Such a key point for what we were saying earlier about it being preventative. A lot of all of what we're going to be talking about and covering is being preventative and being prepared. If you know you're going to have a stressful day, then the better thing to do would be to prepare yourself for that level of stress.
Yeah.
I have a lot of the time known when a stressful day is coming, you know? Yeah. You know which parts of the month or the week or whatever else is going to be more stressful. And so, it's easy to get bogged down and get worried and start stressing over this, and then just hoping, just hoping that it goes away, or, just fretting about it beforehand. But if you start trying to wing it, thinking just kind of going like, oh, okay, and ignoring it, and then when it comes to it, you just try and muddle through. Whereas even it's something as simple as thinking through the stresses that you're going to have to deal with can be useful. And then if you find anything where you like you're saying with your lunches, if I, for instance, knew that I was going to have an incredibly busy day and I didn't usually make lunches, I mean, I do, but if you were someone who didn't usually make lunches, or let's say you make your lunch every day, it's usually leftovers from the night before, needs to be heated up, need time to sit down and eat. If you know that you've got a day coming up where you're not going to have the time to sit down and eat, then it would be useful to then prepare and make something that you could eat on the go. Very basic example of what we're talking about, but it's all about preparing, being aware, and really kind of being more in, being more interactive with your own life. Instead of letting life kind of happen to you, it's about taking charge of the things that you can take charge of. Like you said earlier, there are things that you can change and things that you can't change. I think that's a very key point as well, is that everyone has tools at their disposal. Everyone has things around them that they can use to make a change within their life. And it's important to kind of think about what you're going to change first, you know, or what changes you're going to make. Because like we've been saying, it's all about making things suit you. So, you know, there are times when you can make yourself feel like you're doing something without actually doing something. So, for instance, if I wanted to get more healthy, I would just think, okay, so what thing can I do right off the cuff and go and do it? But something that sometimes happens is that you go, oh, okay, I want to get healthy, so I'd better go out and buy a professional set of shoes, running gear, wicking top, sweatbands,
the whole lot,
the whole set of gear. So then you feel like you've done something, but you actually haven't.
No,
you've
just bought the
gear.
You've
just bought the gear. You've just exchanged actually getting started with just doing something that makes you feel like you've done something, which I think is always something to think about if you're starting to make these changes. Is like, you have to think, okay, what do I have the tools to do? What can I change? And how can I do it now? Because like you were saying about, you know, if you're sat there watching TV for 2 hours a day, if you find yourself in that position, if you are literally just sat there watching TV, then that's a moment. That is a light bulb moment when you can go, oh, this is something I control and I can instantly change this.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is something I can do right now. And I think if you look for those things first, look for the stuff that you have the tools to change, and then over time you can, you know, you will be able to make bigger changes. You will be able to change more.
Absolutely.
It's just that the best place to start is your immediate surroundings. I mean, one thing that is super, super simple but incredibly effective: tidy your room, tidy your house, get your area clear, like, or your at work. If it's at work that all your stress is coming from, clean up your desk, you know, like get it clear, get it like optimized for what you need to do, like your living space again, get it optimized for what you need to do. But that's just an example of like something that's very, everyone has that tool, you know. This is why we're saying like it's well-being for anyone, because anyone has at least one thing that they can change about their life. Everyone has one thing that they have complete control over and can change.
First, we were saying that, you know, anyone can do it, and I think one of the things which you very briefly said, which I'd actually like to go back to, is that you said that it was a very basic example, and everything that we're going to talk about really are quite basic examples.
No, you're absolutely right.
And then the other thing is that you are able to decide to what extent you choose something that's out there. We've spoken about there being some form of like stigma around the well-being, and you can pick something which may or may not be seen by other people. And I think if you're going to pick something which is going to be seen by other people, great. There may be some people who are unpleasant and make comments which, you know, sort of judgmental comments about it. And you know what? Like, just
let them.
Just ignore them. Just let them. It doesn't matter. If it's something which makes you feel better, enables you to tackle the day, be a better person, then don't be put off by that like one flippant comment. It's like, oh, that looks healthy. That probably tastes disgusting.
Oh, I get that a hell of a lot.
You know, like,
so
oh, that's
much.
salad.
Yeah.
Oh. It's like, yeah, but I feel amazing.
Salad. yeah.
Like, I feel
exactly.
Your bacon sandwich that you have every day, how are your arteries doing?
Harsh but fair.
I'm never going to say that to someone.
You'd never say it to someone's face, but I know exactly what you mean.
But, you know, like, and don't be put off, is what I'm saying, is don't be put off by instant knee-jerk reactions from people who don't want to make a better life for themselves, and instead judge other people who are trying to make things better. And I think, unfortunately, it's normal to comment on differences,
these types of things,
differences on people generally, but then also healthy. I'm doing choices. Inverted commas.
Doing air quotes.
The air quotes, but like healthy choices, people are more inclined to.
I was just going to say, just to use an example, like to give it a little bit of like a different context, because what you're saying is absolutely correct. A different kind of example of a similar type of thing is when you look at alcoholics. You know, if you hang around with a group of alcoholics who go out drinking all the time and that's all they do, and then all of a sudden you're like, I need to stop drinking, like I'm not feeling good, I need to cut down, I'm not doing okay. First thing they're going to do, if you tell them, if they're a group of drinkers and they want to continue drinking, they are not going to be supportive of you, for one.
No, they're not.
Not in a million years. And the first thing they're going to do is mock you. And probably the only thing they're going to do.
And probably buy you a pint as well.
And probably buy you a pint.
Don't be silly.
Here you go. Have a drink. Because they want you to conform. Yeah, they want you to be in the same position as them, because it also justifies their position.
Yeah.
If you go out drinking with a massive group of people every single day, then it's not just you drinking. You don't have to face up for your decision. You've got the support of a group around you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily, just because you've got support, that doesn't mean that it's a good thing. And I just wanted to use that example just because that's a more common, that's something that it's very easy to see. Well, the group of people that are alcoholics are the ones in the wrong. Very easy to see that. But when it comes to like health and stuff, for some reason, because of like the bit of stigma that surrounds it, it's a lot easier to think like, oh, I guess they're right. Yeah, why am I eating a salad? I guess why am I doing meditation? I guess that is a bit silly. It's not. If it's something that works for you, it's not silly whatsoever. And if people don't support it, if you're actively trying to improve your own life and you've got people in your life that aren't supporting you, then, the easy answer is, just cut them out, straight away, just cut them out. But obviously that's not
always practical.
Yeah. Like we say, this is all focused on, doing things that are, it's personal changes. So us saying, cut them out. Though for me, there have been occasions where I've managed to cut someone out of my life and it's been the right decision and I've done it. I'm also aware that, there's lots of people, you can't cut some people out of your life, If it's a family member, it becomes a lot more difficult. If it's a work colleague, it becomes a lot more difficult. So it's about having the internal confidence to continue, even if the people around you aren't always being supportive, and you've got to just keep up with the idea that this is for you, your change, your life, and it's for you and no one else, really. It's not for anyone else. It's if you're doing this to I don't know, impress your crush, or if you're doing this because someone's asked you to, it's not going to work. It's not the right mentality to have. It's not sustainable. It has to be personal, driven, and completely yours, and you need to own it and drive yourself forward with it.
Great. I think that's a good note to end on for this first episode. Do you think?
I think so. I think we've covered the basics of what we're going to be talking about throughout this podcast.
I think, to give a brief summary, well-being for anyone. We think that anyone can struggle with their well-being from time to time, some more than others, but anyone can take the small steps to becoming or to have better well-being in their day-to-day life. If that's of interest to you, then please come back to the next episode. If you've got this far, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for listening. Absolutely. And we hope that in the future, we can impart some ideas that you'd be able to use in your everyday life. And like we say, pick and choose. If you've listened to this one episode and hopefully we've got a few out, then just look at the ones that interest you. If there's a subject that you don't think is going to be for you, then, give it a pass. But just have a look through, see the ones that you think are going to work for you, and hopefully we can all have a little bit better well-being in the future.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.